This week, we will read one of the most moving episodes in Sefer Breshit, as Yaakov Avinu takes ill, realizes that his end is near, and beckons his children to his bedside, not only to say goodbye, but to bless them, and even to offer some words of rebuke. As the Gemara notes, Ad Yaakov lo hava chulsha, that until that moment, no one had ever suffered from a fatal illness. But Yaakov prayed for mercy, and he took ill, which may seem somewhat strange, and especially to be described as a prayer for mercy. But according to Chazal, until Yaakov did, people would pass away without warning, unable to prepare, unable to say a final goodbye. Instead, according to Chazal, they would just sneeze and die, which is the reason we say Gesundheit or Labriut, wishing people good health whenever they sneeze. And it's also the reason that just a few weeks ago, when Yitzchak feared that death was imminent, that he called Esav to give him a final blessing, which didn't have to happen when it did, because Yitzchak would live another 60 years. But he didn't know. He couldn't know when the end would come. And fearing that it would, without warning, Yitzchak chose to bless Esav, or at least tried to bless him before it was too late. But then came Yaakov Avinu, who prayed and was given the merciful gift of being able to prepare for his own passing. So he called to his children to come together with the words, He'asfu v'agida lachem, assemble, and I will tell you, et asher yikra etchem b'acharit hayamim, that which will happen to you in the end of the days. But according to the Midrash, what he said wasn't simply a summons to appear, because they were already there. Rather, it was a request, tzivau tana la machloket, to avoid machloket, to steer clear of familial strife and needless infighting. Tiu kulechon asefa achat, asking them to always be together. He'asfu, said Yaakov. And yet, if what Yaakov wanted to accomplish in his final moments was to increase brotherly love and decrease antipathy, wouldn't it have made more sense to speak to all of his sons as one? Why did he choose to give each son a different bracha, some positive, some complimentary, and some very harsh? If he really wanted to foster harmony and brotherly love, why offer words that could arouse jealousy and enmity? How could it possibly have advanced the goal of tzivau tan ala machloket? Rav Aaron Lichtenstein Zatzal suggested that the answer can be found at the end of this section of the brachot, in the words the Torah uses to wrap it all up. Vayevarech otam, and Yaakov blessed them, said the Torah. Ish kevirchato berach otam. Each, according to his blessing, he blessed them. Why the seeming redundancy, and why the unusual shift between the plural of otam, them, and the singular kevirchato, his blessing? Said Rav Aaron Zatzal, look at the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, who explained the phrase Ish Asher Kevirchato, meaning Hara'ui lo kefi v'chinat nishmato ukefi ma'asav, that each bracham was calibrated and consistent with the spiritual characteristics and the talents of each son. And so the brachot had to be different, because real blessing, real bracha, is individualized. It's when you help a person to fulfill his or her own talents, and therefore it can't be generic, one size fits all kind of bracha. It's analogous to what makes a compliment meaningful. The more specific, the more unique, the more particular, the more meaningful a compliment can be. That's why they each received a different message and a different wish. But Yaakov also wanted the brothers to remain together, to be ready to create a new nation. And therefore, Berachotam, he blessed them all at once, since they were all on the same team. And therefore, when one would succeed, the entire family would ultimately succeed, which Rav Aaron Lichtenstein said is the real meaning of the Achdut that Yaakov wanted when he gathered all of his sons together. He wanted unity and diversity. He wanted to create a synergy among his children that respected each brother's unique abilities, each contributing something different to the whole, to the future nation of the Jewish people, rather than merely duplicating the contribution of others. Unity and diversity. That's the lesson of these brachot, and the message I offer for your consideration. For while it may be tempting to wish that everyone was the same, that everyone would always agree, and everyone would see the same challenges and the same opportunities, in reality, that's not what the world is about. After all, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created every person on this earth, B'Tselem Elokim, in his image, and yet no two beings look the same, which maybe is what God wanted us to understand, that diversity, as difficult as it can be to manage, can be divine, and that just as different voices create beautiful harmonies of song, different perspectives, different strengths, and even different opinions can create a beautiful, harmonious world, but only when we sing the same song, only when we seek the same goals to build this world with chesed, to bring people closer to God, to focus on those things we share and use our differences, as did the sons of Yaakov, to strengthen one another. In fact, that said, Reb Chaim Brisker is what the Targum meant when it commented on the word he'asfu, gather, and wrote, idaku misoavuta, purify yourselves, because unity and diversity are not only difficult, they can also lead to compromise that defiles instead of sanctifies, lead to disagreements that highlight our differences and ignore our commonalities. Months ago, we were celebrating the achdut of our community as we responded together to the pandemic. And while things have changed, and we bemoan not only the tragedies that have occurred, but the lack of uniform responses, if you step back for just a moment and look, despite all our differences and all the differences that remain, we have so much to celebrate. There are programs that provide food and assistance to diverse communities that never existed before. And there is our federation that has helped chesed organizations, schools, and summer camps like never before. There are doctors and nurses and medical personnel of our community, heroes of our pandemic, who serve as resources to shuls and schools of every stripe. And there is communication among leadership, right to left and left to right, that flows clearly and easily. We may choose different responses, but we are a community that is stronger than ever before. Said Yaakov to his sons, He'asvu, come together despite your differences. Tiyu kulchon asefa achat. Avoid disputes and find your common ground, which is not an easy task, and it requires constant effort. Yet it is the blessing of Yaakov, a blessing that asks us to appreciate and not denigrate our differences, and in turn become the worthy heirs to all of Yaakov's brachot, blessings that have shaped our people and that guide our future. Shabbat Shalom.